Welcome to Men in the City. In this video, we're going to talk about why men fell. How did that happen? How did men fall? How did that demotion occur? Well, that's what we're going to talk about today. There's a Chinese philosopher, his name is Lao Tzu, and Lao Tzu said that nature takes its time, but everything is accomplished. And in this context, that means that things that we're experiencing today, whether it's the breakdown of marriage, or it's the rise of unemployment, or it's friction between the genders, or it's socioeconomic inequality, whatever, they have been a long time coming. And when I say long time coming, I don't mean a decade. I mean multiple decades. And really the fulcrum point around which so many things changed was the 1960s. So in the 1960s, there were two critical changes. You might say they were cultural antecedents that began the ball spinning in the wrong direction. And in the context of men and women, they were birth control and second wave feminism. Birth control decoupled sex from marriage in ways that I don't think many people even today properly understand. Now, it is the case that Jordan Peterson and Rollo Tomassi and many people like that talk about the consequences of birth control, and they're quite right to do so. But at a very basic level, birth control allowed women to choose short-term casual sexual partners that had nothing to do with long-term commitment. And since women are the sexual selectors, that completely reshuffled the sexual marketplace in ways that we're still living with today. That happened in the 1960s. What also happened in the 1960s was the rise of second wave feminism. And second wave feminism decoupled femininity from marriage. In fact, it claimed more or less that marriage and motherhood were disempowering to women, that they were in some respects constraining or oppressive to women, and that the patriarchy had convinced or conveyed to women that marriage and motherhood were essential in order to oppress them. These very destructive ideas have compelled women to act against their nature, to deny the very things that give them power, like motherhood, like fertility, and ultimately the union that is marriage. In addition to those cultural antecedents, men have experienced a consistent decline of socioeconomic power. Now, a lot of that started in the 1980s because during the 1980s, the country's economic structure completely changed. So manufacturing jobs went overseas. The financialization of the economy really began, meaning to get that house, to get that car, to get that college degree, you borrowed money. You didn't pay for it out of pocket anymore, which really meant that your life was borrowed. It was an artificial construct of sorts that you leverage credit to finance. That culture persists to this very day. In addition to that, we had various political antecedents. The most recent, of course, that we're all dealing with today is wokeism. And what wokeism has advocated is the decoupling of men or masculinity from leadership. So if you add these two or three different categories, this cultural antecedents, political antecedents, and socioeconomic antecedents, men have fallen through this crack in which they're disempowered at work. They don't have the jobs that they used to have. They don't have the socioeconomic power they used to have. At the same time, women are more empowered in many respects because they have more money, they're more active at university, they go into the corporate sector and so forth. Women are weaponized against men because of wokeism. Because wokeism teaches women that men are a threat, and that if men are being masculine, if we're being leaders, that somehow is oppressive to women. This smorgasbord has created a cocktail of constraint, of limitation, of frustration in the psyches of men, who in many respects deny that some of these changes have occurred. So you have men that are clinging on to this paradigm of marriage between a man and a woman, thinking that somehow the attitudes, the inhibitions or the constraints that women used to feel, the social sanctions against cheating or against mate switching or whatever you want to call it, are still there. And unfortunately, they're gone, which is in part why marriage today as an institution has completely fallen apart. For younger men on the way to marriage or on the way to longer term relationships, we also have to contend with online dating. And online dating, unfortunately, has deprecated or eliminated the vast majority of men from the marketplace. Why? Because the vast majority of men in the dating marketplace don't have much in the way of income, or at least they're not in the top 10 or 20%. They don't have a certain mentality that accepts some of these nuanced dynamics. These you might say core principles of attraction in a world in which the legacy order just doesn't exist anymore. Specifically, what I mean is that because sex and marriage are decoupled, the old ways of attracting a woman are gone. The old ways used to be having a stable job, being a good person, having a character that was in good standing in the community. Those things don't carry the weight that they used to carry. They simply don't, because of online dating. In an online dating format, those variables are vaporized. They're deprecated. They're eliminated, or in some sense, they just are marginalized to the point of irrelevance, because what matters more are looks and height and income and all of these superficial metrics that define a higher value person. Deep in the psyche of men and women, I think there's an awareness that this has created a massive imbalance, that women are unhappy. They don't really want to chase that top 10 or 20%. They recognize that that's toxic, at least intuitively. And at the same time, men who are falling out of the dating marketplace recognize that these imbalances make it virtually impossible for them to attract women. And even if they do, most men who want to get married, who want to have a family and so forth, they recognize the likelihood of having something like that, having a lasting relationship that terminates in marriage, is unlikely. And even if you get there, that marriage is likely to fail. Unfortunately, because of all of these changes and because of these imbalances, the genders are being pulled apart. Well, my sense is that Neo-Masculinity, what this channel is all about, is about to change all of that. The reason so many of these changes have occurred with devastating effect, and there hasn't been much of a counterweight, is because there hasn't been any mass awakening to them. There hasn't been any real mass movement of men to push back. Well, today, that has changed. And that has changed because of the rise of the manosphere. It's changed because socioeconomic problems have hit a critical mass, and people recognize that the fiat system, the 9-to-5 paradigm, it just no longer works anymore. And they're coming up with new ways. They're embracing new technologies and new monetary systems like Bitcoin as an example, or the creator economy as ways of reorganizing their economic value. The consequence of this is going to be a drastic shift in a new direction in the near future. It's going to be a revival in many respects of the older dynamics, but with new twists. And that is what Neo-Masculinity is all about. Stay tuned for more. We'll talk again soon.